Okay, we're going to get started. Thanks everyone for being here at this meeting for worship with attention to business. Today, our meeting is going to be a little bit different than our usual business meeting, and just so the people on Zoom no, the agenda, I just took one of the things off the agenda that originally was sent out on the Friday email blast. That's the one from the nominating committee. We will do that in June. So that was taken off the agenda. And the reason why we're going to be doing a couple things, the presentation from Denise Hay, the finance committee budget and climate action report. And after those things, we're going to be having the Stonehouse group is going to be doing a presentation here during meeting for business for about a half hour. And then following that, there will be an opportunity for people to ask questions and for some discussion. So that's the way we're going to be doing it today, which is a little different than our usual business meeting. So just wanted to let everyone know. Um, okay. So is the recording on? Is it okay? Um, okay, so we're going to start with, is Denise there? Denise, hey, I don't see her on there. No. Okay. So I'm not sure what happened there, but maybe what we'll do is I'll text her maybe we'll start with the finance committee budget. George Elser is going to be reporting the budget for the 2026, 2027 year. And for meeting, we're going to be doing either approval or disapproval of the budget. And so that's what we're asked to do our meeting today. Thanks, George.
Did I hear you say this?
I should have.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We have Finance Committee has been meeting over the last couple months on working on the budget going forward for next year, next fiscal year, which begins July 1. A note, as Margie said, that Stonehouse Group will be making a presentation later today. The meeting will be over a period of time considering the report and the recommendations in their reports. So anything really to do with Stonehouse Group and their recommendations is not in this budget now. If the budget needs to be amended or addressed later, we will do that on an ongoing basis. So just so everybody knows that. There really is very little change to the budget from last year to this year. Items to note are, the first is line 4020, ongoing grants from Founders Trust. They were in the past, Founders Trust has been distributing $20,000 to the meeting each year, and then the meeting has been using that money to pay for various costs on maintaining the meeting property. After a good bit of thoughtful discussion, we've decided to change that to simply making requests periodically to Founders Trust. That's going to be a lot simpler bookkeeping for everybody at both at the meeting and at Founders Trust. We have put in $10,000 there on that first line, and that is because based on what the estimated budget for maintenance is, it's about $10,000. So we are putting that in even before the request. The next so that's really it, I think, in the income area. The expense area, the change in expense, really, there are two changes in expense. Line 5113, which is, we budgeted $28,000 a year to repay Founders Trust for the loan that they gave us to work on the first day school in order for Mainline Montessori to move in, or anybody to move in. The building really needed to be upgraded. Our final payment will be in the upcoming year, and that's $16,906. So going forward after next year, we will not have any obligation to repay that loan. So that money will, in a sense, will not affect expenses. It will not be reflected as an expense going forward. The other bit of expense, if you go all the way to the end, line, this is a new item, line 5830. This is for an administrative assistant. Margie has been thinking about this for a while, and she's been talking to various committees, and we're going to get an administrative assistant who at this point will be a college student who will help with the Zoom every week and will help with certain mailings and the Friday email, right, the Friday email blast. And so this is based on weekly pay plus some travel. We felt that it was important to be able to reimburse this student for her travel. So that is where we are. When you go down to the bottom, the net quote loss of $10,000. Remember, that will be, most of that or even more of that will be made up once we make the request to Founders Trust, which those requests come a combination of discussion with Property Committee and Finance Committee, and Finance Committee makes the actual request to Founders Trust, and they consider that as needed. So first, are there any comments or questions on the budget? Keith Fox, you get a.
When does this administrative assistant begin? Or have you identified the person yet?
So I was just actually going to talk. So yes, we've hired a administrative assistant. She's a Bryn Mawr College student. In the newsletter, actually, there was a little blurb about her if you'd like more information, but she will be starting on June the 7th. And so, yeah, has excellent recommendations. And we're really, really pleased. David and I met with her, interviewed with her, and yeah, we're really excited to have her join us and help with some of the administrative responsibilities in the meeting. We are starting mainly with doing like what Judy's doing now with the computer and with the weekly email blast. And then, we'll have to sort of see, depending on how much time she has, maybe she can do other things too. But we're really thrilled to have her join us and help with some of the work here.
Is she going to show up here sometime? I mean,
she has visited. So she came on the 26th of April, came and visited the meeting, actually was in a meeting for worship, and we introduced her to people. She's met some of the people here at meeting. So yeah, so she has been here, and some people even know her from Bryn Mawr. But anyway, yeah, does that answer your question, Keith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
This is Peter, for those
Peter,
who
yeah.
can't see. Peter.
the on line 4210 dividend interest and income. I was wondering why that was only $20 and
Oh, okay. Peter asked about the change on line 4210. What we have done is moved that number up to Friends, our distribution from Friends Fiduciary, because we no longer have any accounts held on our own as me outside of Friends Fiduciary that produce any interest. And of course, bank interest is extremely low at this point. So that's what that is. And in fact, in thinking about that, going back, I probably should have made that change earlier in an earlier budget, because that money was already coming from Friends Fiduciary. So Peter gets the Eagle Eye Award today. Any questions on Zoom?
Anybody on Zoom? Questions, comments? Okay. Okay, so right now I'm putting out to the meeting, do we have approval for this budget for the 26-27 fiscal year?
Approved.
Approved. Okay, approved. Thank you so much, George, and also the finance committee for all your work in getting this to this point where we are able to approve this. Thank you.
Awesome group to work with.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Yeah, I still haven't heard back from Denise, so I'm feeling we're not going to do the PYM statistics this business meeting, but we'll go on to our next item. And this is from the Climate Action Committee. So they have been working on a PYM membership development grant and have been discussing this with the committee, have written up a document about this. This would be submitted to PYM for this grant, and this was available in the Friday email blast. So I don't know if people had.
Yeah, Margie, I think that didn't happen. Actually, it didn't get into the.
Oh, didn't get there. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I did
Okay.
I did just post a link to the document for people on Zoom, and I guess it could be shared, and maybe, I don't know, Lee will speak to it, the elements of it.
Yeah. And well, also the other really good thing is that today Lee is going to be presenting a summary of what this grant is. So basically we're asking the meeting about going ahead with this application to PYM for this membership development grant. And so I'm going to now sign off to Lee so she can explain more the
Okay.
detail about it, and then there will be opportunity to ask questions about this. Go, Lee, is that?
Hi, yes, forgive the speed reading. I've got to get through this in 5 minutes.
Oh,
And to clarify too, this is on behalf of Radnor Monthly Meeting as a whole. Climate Action put it together and came to unity. And we have also shared it with the clerk of the Outreach Committee. This proposed minute speaks to Radnor Monthly Meetings 2026 work to enhance outreach and connections for inclusion, reparations, and eco-justice. The Philadelphia Yearly Meeting Membership Development Grant supports projects that enhance the visibility and outreach of monthly meetings in their communities. Grants come from a portion of the unrestricted bequests left each year to Philadelphia Yearly Meeting. These gifts are used to increase and strengthen membership so that the Society of Friends will remain vital well beyond the donors' lifetimes and our own. Here are samples of 2 recent grants to provide a sense of the type and scope of the grants. $700 to Southampton Monthly Meeting for a Quakerism workshop with Paul Buckley, historian and author of Primitive Quakerism Revived. $5,000 to Providence Monthly Meeting for Spirit of Our Ancestors, a spiritual memorial and historic tribute to freedom seekers and abolitionists who helped them. A $5,000 grant request for Radnor monthly meeting would bring reenactments of scenes from The Return of Benjamin Lay, a play, to the meeting house or a venue to be determined. The application would be submitted by the 1st of June, 2026 for funds available for reenactments in October or November 2026. Past related event, relevance to membership development. Last November's launch of children's book Fearless Benjamin, held at Abington Meeting House, was outstanding. Our Radnor meeting clerk, plus 2 more members, plus an attender and Climate Action Committee member and their parent, came to the event. This event gave the Radnor Monthly Meeting Climate Action Committee experience with assistance in organizing. We provided food and drink at the event and helped Abington Meeting with advertising and public writings in advance and post-event. The event drew perhaps 80 guests from beyond the Abington congregation, with some being introduced to a Quaker setting for the first time. Need for funds. Funds for the late 2026 events would enable California-based actor Mark Povinelli's presence in the Philadelphia area for readings from the play The Return of Benjamin Lay. Costs are predicted to exceed $7,000. The grant, if $5,000 is approved, would significantly defray these expenses, supporting the project for Radnor and collaborating meetings in our area. About the play, relevance to membership development. The one-person show is inspired by the life of Benjamin Lay, an 18th century Pennsylvania Quaker. It is set in the silence of the Philadelphia area Quaker meeting house of today, from which Benjamin rises to address the community that disowned him in the 1700s for ideas considered disruptive. Our area's history includes vivid stories of this local little person who put on anti-slavery protest theater in the streets of colonial Philadelphia and who called out Ben Franklin for not joining the abolitionist movement. Radnor Meetings Outreach and Climate Action Committees jointly led a field trip to the Philadelphia debut of the play in May 2025. We are heartened to know that Benjamin's well-received message will continue to speak through reenactments in the Philadelphia area featuring the original actor at a time when protest and good trouble seek to regain footing. We draw inspiration from a Philadelphian, a migrant, a worker who risked all by insisting on liberty for all, and Benjamin Lay's lived simplicity, conviction, is modern inspiration for humanity grappling with our impacts on a planet, on our planet and all its living beings. Earth care is foundational to all core Quaker values. The younger generations, potential members, will require that this be part of their spiritual path. About the actor Mark Povinelli was elected and served 2 terms from 2017 to 2024 as the president of Little People of America, which promotes awareness, advocacy, and medical assistance for individuals with forms of dwarfism. Mark's previous stage credits include productions presented at Shakespeare Theater, Lincoln Center, and Radio City Music Hall. Finally, co-playwright Marcus Rediker plans to be present in support. Marcus Rediker, the co-playwright, is the Distinguished Professor of Atlantic History at the University of Pittsburgh. Marcus's Histories from Below, such as The Slave Ship, A Human History, have won several awards, including the George Washington Book Prize, and have been translated into 18 languages. Marcus has produced documentary films, Ghosts of Amistad and Becoming Benjamin Lay, both directed by Tony Buba. This minute, in support of this inspiring and culturally meaningful project, will be appended to Radnor Meetings Membership Development Grant application.
Thank you, Lee. And I have a copy of it here if anybody wants to get more information of it. So does anyone right now have questions for the climate action or Lee about this? Go ahead, Ruth.
Since we're just looking at our budget, where is the other $2,000 going to come from? That's my only concern.
So the $5,000 would come from the Philadelphia Yearly Meetings grant. The other money, which we don't know the exact total that it's going to be, but it's due to exceed 7,000. But we won't be the only local meeting house presenting the readings of the play. Therefore, by applying for the grant from PYM, we would be taking the lead in making this possible, just as Abington Meeting House took the lead with the book launch. So it's us contributing in the best way we know how, without disturbing Radnor Monthly Meetings budget whatsoever. And it was recommended by one of the people who work at PYM as the best possible grant, the one that fits us best. And so we have a very good chance of approval for it. But the short answer to your question is this would not, the overage from the $5,000 would be kicked in by other meetings. And those meetings would be Newtown and Abington and possibly Langhorne. And there's a possibility that a theatrical venue will also step in, but there will be no money in excess of the $5,000 that we'll need to ask budget for a Radnor Monthly Meeting.
Okay, thanks, Lee. Thanks. Any other questions about this? On Zoom? Okay, I don't see any other questions. So what I'm asking the meeting now, are we in unity for going ahead and basically placing this application to PYM for this grant is what we're asking for. Are we in agreement about that?
Approve.
Approve.
Okay, this has been approved. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, and the next thing is the property committee. And do you want to talk before we set things up for? So Anne's going to talk first, and then we will have a presentation from Larry from the Stonehouse Group.
Hi, good afternoon, I guess it is by now. As many of you know, because I've been here for the last couple of business meetings, know that Property Committee has embarked on a journey to prioritize what we should be doing to take care of this property for the next 10 years and maybe longer, but that's the number we're looking at. And in order to help us with that, we have engaged with the Stonehouse Group. And we've asked Stonehouse to come to our property and to do a thorough evaluation, which they have done, and you'll hear about later today. We also asked them to come and do a presentation to the meeting that's going to happen next, and to be available to answer questions about anything that they're presenting to you today. In terms of property committee and what the ask is for today, I view this meeting as information exchange. You're going to hear information from Stonehouse on their recommendations, and it's your opportunity to ask them questions. Following this meeting, Property Committee will meet and put forth recommendations to the meeting, and we will bring that to you in June. But there's no vote or anything of that sort today. Okay. So if you don't have further questions for me, I would like to introduce Stonehouse and let the presentation begin.
And just one thing. So what Anne is saying is that at the June business meeting, we will have recommendations from the property committee and we will be making a decision as to what we're going to be doing as a meeting regarding these recommendations from the Stonehouse Group. So we will making a decision at the business meeting in June, but today is for information will be presented. There'll be opportunities to ask questions, that kind of thing. So just want to make sure that's
And
clear.
that aligns with what George said earlier, that any of the work that we decide to move forward with, we will need to work with finance and figure out how to fund that. Keith?
How much have we paid Stonehouse so far?
The consulting agreement was under $7,000. Any other questions? Okay, so it's my great privilege to introduce Stonehouse, and Larry Amy has joined us, and he is going to do the presentation for us. It'll last about 30 minutes, and then we ask that you just hold your questions, and then we'll answer them after that time. Larry?
The presentation will magically show up
Yep.
there.
Larry, thanks so much for coming. Really appreciate it. Oh, yeah. I'll put your-
I assume someone's going to drive the presentation. It's going to show up behind me. Otherwise, I'll
Yes.
just explain it. Thank you, Anne. Been a pleasure to work with you and David and other members who we've talked to along the way. I remind you, we're here 8 years ago also. 7 years?
It's up.
Thank you. And it reminds us of what we do and why we do it. And I assume why you're all here on a Sunday morning also. We're here because we're passionate about our places. We're here because this space is different than any other space. You can't separate who Radnor Meeting is from its location and its place. And therefore, you're obligated to take care of this place. And that's both good news and bad news. It's good news because it's a sponge and it can soak up periods of time where it takes lots of money, and it can go through periods of time where you don't spend as much, perhaps. And I think the time is coming now where you're beginning to see some of these life cycle things come true. I would like to suggest that our business is part art and part science. So if it were all science, we could have a debate over we wouldn't have much debate over what the right thing to do is, but there's an awful lot of art and there's an awful lot of finance involved with what we do. And a little bit about who we are, so you understand, we're not a Mason firm, even though we're the Stonehouse Group. That's just the place where we held our first meeting 27 years ago. It happens to be an Airbnb now on my property. And for 27 years, we've helped clients such as yours, such as you, understand their buildings. We call it building stewardship. My formative years, I'd like to think, were middle school. They were spent in a friend's school in Washington, D.C. named Sidwell. Our professional work includes Haverford, Swarthmore, Philadelphia yearly meeting, New York quarterly meeting, Wilmington Friends, Morristown Friends, and I assume I'm forgetting some along the way. But Friends take in general significant interest in managing their facilities. And I think that's why we've got so many clients that are Friends clients. We believe that we can help you reach consensus around what the path forward is, because we begin with a survey and we do it with people that are well-versed technically. And that's really the starting point. So I'm here alone, but I was surrounded with teammates as we went through our process. Next slide. Alex was supposed to join me today, but her father is in the hospital and she felt the need to be close by. And I assured her today was all about being high level. We weren't going to go into the weeds today. And if you,
Would you sliding?
I can do that. No, I can slide over here and that way I can see. Was I blocking view? So am I blocking anyone from there? No, we're okay. So Alex was supposed to join me today and couldn't. She's very apologetic. But we will certainly spend time with Ann, Sally, and others if we need to answer some of your questions. Alex loves coming here because she went to college just a few hundred yards away at Villanova. She's a civil engineer and brings great passion for not only the civil side, but also the architectural side. Jack Van Hecken is an energy engineer from Penn State. He is also the father of a youngster, and we told him he could have the day off on Sunday. So that's your team. I was here 8 years ago. Both these folks were new to your campus. Believe it or not, this is who you are. 8,000 square feet of building, and who knows how many square feet in an acre. It's a good Sunday morning question. I think it's 44,580. I think, but you're in the right ballpark. So that's that other part. That's the 217 is really square feet of acreage.
43,560.
We were both wrong. We were both wrong. We were both wrong. But our responsibility was to survey your campus, and that we did. And we're reminded of how would you think about investment in an asset in terms of a ratio. And you probably don't ever really think about what the value of this place is, but I can assure you in this neighborhood, in this location, it's a lot. And even though we're talking about a lot of money to be reinvested in it, it's small compared to what the value of the place is. And I remind you of that because things like the wall around the perimeter, can go for years without being taken care of. And then, as you know, sometimes they call out for care. So that's how we think about your campus. We think about it in terms of square footage, but we also think about it in terms of the perimeter wall. We didn't concern ourselves with trees and horticulture and those types of things, which would also call on your resources. Next slide. Thank you. We have our own vernacular. Please hold your question. These would be fine to ask me if I use an acronym that is not familiar to you. I'll try my best not to. An FCA is a facilities conditions assessment. That's our view of what it needs to maintain this property over 10 years. We break those into priorities. The priorities can be a little gray. It's not as though we say something's a 2 or a 3 and it's going to need to be done in year 8. It's just not that way. It is a judgment and it is a focus. And in this case, it also begins to take place in terms of a plan. And sometimes to do a plan, you might do a priority 2 in order to get to a priority 1 because it just makes sense. And you're going to see some of that here. But those are our priorities. I would like to share some definitions because I think they help understand the stewardship function. If we're doing things that don't behave as though they're asset enhancing or depreciation offsetting, we call those daily service. That might be cleaning, paying the energy bill, cutting the grass, plowing the snow. I'm sure you did some of that this past winter. Those are daily service expenditures. If we do and include daily service expenditures to include preventive maintenance, then usually the cycles we expect that our buildings will have and our building systems will have will be a little longer. We can exceed expectations if we do the right preventive maintenance, or we take systems and we turn them off when they're not needed. When we do cycle maintenance, and we don't do cycle maintenance, it becomes deferred. But we also have some expectations of our properties, just as our cars evolve over time, our buildings evolve over time, how we control them, how we manage them, the materials we use are all examples of some things that might require modernization. And then safety really goes across all the categories, and we don't necessarily categorize those by the other categories. Have I lost anyone yet? No flags on acronyms yet? You're all sitting down so we can talk about some numbers? It's good to hear. Good to hear. Good to see. Okay. So I said we didn't do horticulture. We also didn't look too heavily at furniture, fixtures, equipment, and programmatic changes. That would be in many ways in the things you're doing that are facilities related, but aren't necessarily connected to existing needs. But the rest of the things we looked at. Okay, here's the moment. $640,000. What does that mean? Those are 2026 dollars over 10 years that we believe need to be spent to exercise responsible stewardship for the place that you come to worship. So divide by 10, $64,000 a year. There is an exclusion in this. It doesn't include anything more than a simple allowance right now for the perimeter wall. When we did our work in 2019, we had called out a $100,000 allowance for the wall. It's not that often that we're that good at forecasting cost, but I understand that's about what it cost to replace the wall when it came down. But that wasn't how we intended that expenditure to be made. We intended it to be a reinvestment in the wall to stop it from falling down. So it wasn't quite the same, but you begin to see the subtleties of the back and forth. And the wall is excluded from these numbers, save a $25,000 allowance that is for taking care of some urgent needs. And we'll talk about the wall later. It's a great example of art and science and sometimes new materials that don't always help out. But we're dividing by priority here. What we like to say is that your priority 1 star is small and your priority 1 is getting larger, but they're fairly equal sizes of pie. That's what we like to see. We don't like to see lots of priority 1s. Ideally, they'd all be priority 3s, but that's really never the case. Next slide. We begin to think about categories here, and here's an acronym test. AE is architectural exterior. AI is not what you think it is. It's architectural interior. MEP is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all related to MEP. And then we have grounds, and ADA is the American Disabilities Act requirement, now really nicknamed accessibility in many different ways. So again, we're looking at breakout that begins to tell us how the projects are being spent. And in many ways, it's a little unusual to see architectural exterior more significant than the interior mechanicals. But that's partly because your interior mechanicals are relatively small and the building exterior has long life cycles. That's how we begin to explain what is a little different than we might expect. Thank you. We're getting really much in sync with our slide clicking. Thank you so much. Oh, it's right here. Look at this. So more slices of pie. The fact that we have a lot of cycle maintenance is a good thing. Again, these mean probably more to us than they do to you, but we're beginning to understand the complexion of the projects as they take shape so that we can begin to knit together a series of outputs for you. So if we begin to stack them up and look at how the costs break out, campus is really the grounds, and then the other two are self-explanatory. The systems here are not only newer, but also longer life cycle. That's probably the reason why, even though this is a smaller structure, 3,000 compared to 5,000 square feet, we've got less need here.
And, Laura, I have a question. So this First Day School, so is this since 2019?
No, this is money going forward.
This is money going
So
forward.
of the
course, everybody-
$640,000, this is how it breaks out by the 3 areas: campus, First
Okay.
Day, and the
Okay,
meeting house.
thank you.
We begin to take and divide by square footage. It doesn't apply to the grounds. That's why it goes to 0. But in our, again, this means something to us. When we push over $75 and we push towards 100, it begins to tell us that the need is more acute. If we stack the bar here, we'd still see stack the bar, meaning by priority. We'd still see there's a lot of priority 2s and 3s. That gives us less concern that the total need is fairly high. Next slide. Again, here we're just taking our our formulas and break it in visually so you can begin to see, if you averaged it, it'd be $64,000 a year, but we've got some front loaded because the periods aren't exactly equal, and then some back loading. But again, these aren't crisp. The difference between a priority 2 and a priority 3 is subjective. And there are a lot of people that want us to go out and do 20 years, and we say, no, we're not going to do 20 years because it just gets too fuzzy. 10 years should give us enough runway to know whether we're going up or down in terms of the stewardship of the building. So we take all that and say, how do we build it from an operational plan? We really think of 3 things that come out of our work. One is, what are the projects that need to take place? And that's really what we're going to talk about next. But we also get some planning documents to say, okay, do we have time to think about these things going forward? That's planning. And then we think about financial context. There's none of the planning, nothing can be executed if we don't have the resources to take care of it. So we really think about the study as being three initiatives that help us make better decisions: operational, financial, and planning. And clearly they all come together in some way. But if we begin to look at year 2 outlook, the next couple pieces, occupants first, that's some safety items. It's the wall allowance, and then begin to think about how we break out the other categories. This is really begins to get into the weeds, the work that Alex and team are doing with the property committee. But we're beginning to say, okay, in the next 2 years, what are the things we need to do? And this begins to take shape in that operational plan that allows a alliance with finance committee. Here's the detail of the projects in the next year. These are the high priority work, and you can see there's some very small things like taking care of an outlet to beginning to think about tightening up the building envelope. So I neglected in my opening comments to say we're a very technical firm. I'm probably one of the least technical people. We're filled with architectural engineers and MEP engineers. We don't stamp drawings, but we help make buildings better. And we begin to think about the building science that talks to us about what we're seeing here. And that's where we're really beginning to focus on the actuator and the air seals and those types of components, because they're important from our perspective. And not that our perspective is always right, but they're important for what you want to do forward. If you go to the next slide, which is we're beginning to think about how do we replace the systems next door. In our vernacular, in our world, R22, refrigerant 22, is now a banned substance. It's hard to get a hold of. You can still do it, but you have to pay a lot for it. So R22 machine in our mind says it's calling out for replacement, because you wouldn't want to replace it at the end of its life with something that you'd have to perpetuate, and it would cost you in effect double in my mind. If that machine were to go out, and you had to replace it over the weekend, you'd have to replace it with an R22 machine, or you'd have to repair it, and you'd have to take out the refrigerant, put in the old refrigerant, and it's just the wrong thing to do. So we agree that when we see an R22 machine, it says, okay, let's begin to think about how we do that. Well, when that machine was installed, we knew less, cared less about the environment, and were sensitive enough to how we might do that differently now. And differently means perhaps a heat pump. But I'd also say, and Anne's been very helpful at this isn't the time where we design the solution, it's the time where we identify the replacement in kind, in effect. But this one's a slightly different in kind. But we'd be the first to tell you, we share your passion for the environment. It's an awful lot of what we do. I forgot to mention, we did the greenhouse gas inventory, the climate action plan, for Philadelphia yearly meeting. And we've also worked at Friends Center, helping them with their LEED Platinum building that's no longer working quite as well because the heat pumps aren't working as well as they should. So I say all that, and then I say, well, one of the things we believe we should be considering here is a geo-exchange system that would allow us to think differently about how we heat and cool. They're good long-term. They often have a slightly higher first cost. There are incentives out there right now. They change frequently, but the federal government incentives, which, without getting into a sensitive conversation, are used by many, many different organizations to offset the cost. And We haven't done any of the preliminary geology. We did do a lot of scans to see if we could find a way to make solar work in an attractive way. And we really just couldn't. Too compact and too much shade. But we did look hard. So we're beginning to set up in the priority ones to get ready for the next two, which is to begin to replace those units with similar units to what you have here, heat pump with gas backup. And the question is, if the envelope's tight enough and we were to do a blower door test and we were to look at geo exchange, is there a possibility that that would be a big deduction to your climate goals, or a big help for your climate goals? But this is again how we begin to see the projects taking shape. So some windows here. No, we're good. We're good. So recommendations are begin to move this forward. It takes a while to build consensus around how to move forward. But in many ways, us coming in as a third party and saying, we're used to taking care of buildings such as this. We understand old buildings. We understand the process of decision making. We understand governance. But at the same time, we also understand finance. And we also understand your mission. And we begin to layer all those pieces together. And we say, now's the time to begin that process. And that process might have a series of steps. It might be that we want to look at the geology. It might be that we want to look at the incentives from PECO. It might mean that we want to begin with an air test to see how leaky the building is, for example. We believe it's fairly leaky. That's important to know because the new HVAC system won't do as well in a leaky building. But we need to tighten up the envelope in order to shift to a heat pump or even a geo exchange system. So those are our recommendations going forward. On time and on budget. Maybe. Oh, that was good. That was a good one. So I covered a lot. I didn't use any acronyms. I see some people anticipating their questions, and if you don't have any, I got questions for you. But I'd love to have a conversation about this.
Geo exchange, geothermal.
I'm at Geo Exchange, and I'm a bit of a. I know you're a teacher at heart. Oh my. Geothermal is when you go down a couple miles and you get hot magma that you can make steam with. Geo exchange is what we think of and what we call, as a group, we call it geothermal, but it is a misnomer. So I hope to give you a little bit of education on a Sunday morning. Geo exchange is what we call geothermal, but it's a misnomer. So that's what I mean by geo exchange. So 100 to 400 feet? Sir, so I had two questions. I had geo exchange versus geothermal, which I think I answered. Then I had a question about how deep is a geo exchange well? And the answer is 100 to 400 feet, typically. Maybe here we'd be on the closer to 100 feet. And the belief is you get to the mean temperature of the area where you are. So in this area, that's about 54 degrees or so. So you get free 54-degree cooling or heating, and therefore you're only using a heat pump to raise up the delta of that, which is what makes them so effective, because you've taken away the big extremes, and now you're just working on the delta. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had thought the geothermal was where you go down about 6 feet and you put the grid of piping there.
You are also correct. That would what we call lateral or horizontal geo exchange. We don't see as many of them, and typically they take more disruption. They work well if you're already building a new parking lot. There are applications where they do work. Absolutely, that's horizontal geo exchange.
Oh, okay, good. Couple of other questions. When you were talking about emergency immediate repair to the wall, does that include the columns that are at the entryway or
Really
by the
calling it an
driveway?
allowance to take care of and do a scan and do the pieces that are most important from the eyes of the window. And Anne may be ahead of me on this one.
Yeah, part of the wall that we want to stabilize right now is just up almost across from the dental office because it looks like it's caving in. And so that's what we think of as an emergency. We do not include in that price the cables. So that's our immediate focus. Where the gate post.
And also about the installation, the change to heat pumps for the first day school, following on preparation of the building envelope to reduce the need for it. Has it been considered to put in a heat pump that will accommodate the needs of the building now, even if that is an upsize to the equipment, just so that it stops the use of burning fossil fuels at the earliest possible time, and then following it with the, say, the insulation of the building to basically make it better and have a reserve capacity of the heat pump.
Let's say that's a really good question for the next phase, is to go through that back and forth. Every instinct we have, every experience we have says we should work on the envelope first, and that is a way to save fossil in the near term.
I agree if it's exchange like for like, but this is a fossil fuel net benefit to go to heat pumps, and we want to move that
I'm going to answer you
ASAP.
in a way that you may not necessarily appreciate it, but I'll try the following. I would want to go look, for example, at optimizing the system in this building first, because I believe that the outdoor air is not a smart outdoor air sensor, and that we're taking in outdoor air regardless of what the temperature is outside and whether we're occupied or non-occupied. So there's a sub conversation that says, yes, if we wanted to look at those items that would help us the most in that goal, it might be what we call retro commissioning of this system, which isn't a project we've talked about here. It's much more operational, but it's what Jack saw when he was here. We're going to have a long conversation.
Is that about the metering and control of the airflow in here, keeping the equipment stable?
Yes. Yes. So we couldn't see because it's all very carefully insulated and installed very nicely. But we're believing we've got an open outside air. So when we were here on what was a day when we shouldn't have been firing fossil fuels, we were, in part because we were bringing in outdoor air.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'll repeat the question if you'd like. Yeah.
In thinking about the wall, it seems to me that we haven't lost much in terms of our aesthetics or anything else by the loss completely of the wall to our right down towards Conestoga Road. And I don't see why we don't just take the whole wall out. I mean, what are we maintaining it for? It's not of any value and not of any use.
I'm gonna avoid that question. I'm going to avoid it because our job was to identify a problem and to give courses of action. And we found a mason nearby who gave a series of options that are more detailed. But yes, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, that's a good question, Keith, but it's something that we're going to need to talk about as a meeting at a different time than now. But it's a very important question that you're asking, and we will be addressing that as a meeting, okay? Just not right now.
For the wall, you're talking about replacing it completely rather than shoring it up?
So I think Margie just suggested that the wall itself requires a series of pictures and investigation, and we're just beginning that process. There are three thoughts in mind. Emergency repairs, which are in our numbers, and then there are two ways to proceed, and maybe there are hybrids in between. One would be to disassemble it, and the other would be to repair it. But it's a bugaboo.
So you disassemble the wall and rebuild it with the same stones? Okay.
Or to make repairs. So
Yeah.
again, I don't want to go too deep.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
this is a great example of technical input where the initial findings are that we used Portland cement some time ago. Portland cement isn't necessarily compatible with how we want the wall to be able to breathe. And therefore that's part of the challenges is how do we renovate it?
And then also there's a line item for renovating the stone wall in the early childhood program as well? Is that, or did I not see that?
It's a wooden fence. Thank you.
Oh, okay,
Thank
sorry.
you, Sally. Walls, 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 walls.
Yeah, I have two things to say, and this may be more for property now that we've gone through some of this discussion. If we're not going to do the wall and nothing by the gate posts, my concern is the signs that say enter only are right. You have to drive into the driveway to see them. And when we have people at the Easter egg hunt and people coming in for memorial service today from out of town, they don't see it. It's in concrete. So if you do work on the wall, would it be expedient at that point in time to dig it up and move it out further where it can be seen? That's one thing.
No, she wants an answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Winnie. Realize the sign and the entrance needs to be fixed. If we work on that part of the wall, we can certainly include it at that time. But on the other hand, I can take this back to property and we can come up with potentially some interim solutions.
And this is definitely for property, and I can get you the information. I strongly recommend you talk to Ross Mitchell at Marion Meeting, who has written multiple grants for historic property, preservation of historic property, and trying to fix things at Marion. I'll get you that.
Great. It's perfect that I follow Winnie always. It may be for property as well. The question, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the solar energy conversation that we had. One of our Benjamin Lay fellows had done some research working on her project and shared some of that with the Climate Action Committee. You used the word shade. So I'm just curious, and again, it may be more of a property question, but in terms of the capacity of trying to do a little bit more in terms of incorporating solar energy into the design, just curious about your thoughts.
We use a system called Helioscope. Helioscope forecasts not only the exact orientation and the tilt. Sure. The question is, where are we in thinking about solar? And we looked hard, and we use a system called Helioscope. Helioscope allows us to model each panel in a way that's based on its orientation, but also its tilt and its shading. And when we see that, we get to a point where we can't get levelized energy at a cost that's compatible with what you're paying now. And it begins to tilt us towards that geo-exchange conversation instead, because it appears to be a better strategy. That was our initial look. And as we begin to think about climate, how do we think about how to lower it? What is your greenhouse gas inventory? And that would be a whole nother fun conversation to link property with climate. In my mind, they're intrinsically already linked, but how can we help that bridge would be a good exercise.
So what I hear you saying is not that cutting ourselves off from PICO, and providing ourselves with heliocentric solar panels to run all of our heating and other electric needs, but to reduce the need for it by going to a heat pump that requires less energy. I mean, what we have in this building is already an air-sourced heat pump.
With gas backup.
with gas backup. Yeah. So, I mean, we're not exactly certain on where the settings on that are, but
And I think that's worth doing. And in fact, there are a couple of ways to do it. We can model the cost of carbon into the different scenarios.
yes.
We can look at the cost component. GeoExchange, again, high first cost, but it looks to us as though this is a high water table, therefore a shorter well. And then does it begin to make sense? On the solar, it was very conclusive to us that it would be signaling and not doing appropriate amount of work. And we're very careful to want to do it in a way that makes sense. We do this across the tri-state area, and this was just an application that didn't work for us, save maybe a ground mount system further away.
A ground mounted system? I mean, just on the soil someplace out there.
Yeah, somewhere out there.
Right. And bring it in on cables.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to be precise, it wouldn't be disconnecting from the grid. That's a whole nother series of math to go to batteries and create enough demand. That's not necessarily financially attractive either. But in Pennsylvania, we don't have a lot of incredibly helpful rules and laws, but our net metering laws in Pennsylvania are very attractive and very effective.
Okay. Also, looking at the timeline for this, I mean, I don't want to talk politics because we're kind of don't want to do that here.
Thank you.
We've been talked to about that, but it may be that a different administration might be more welcoming of such innovation than our current administration is.
So I like to not talk politics also, but what I do like to talk is solar right now is on the fringe of being sunset in near term. It's July 4th end date for safe harbor. But maybe what's more important and thinking more broadly is that the cost of electricity is up more than the 30% that the tax credit gave. So in some ways, we've already subsidized it. So those things are at parity now because the rates have gone up, and we're just beginning to feel those rate increases. And I don't think they're over. I think we're going to go through a long period of energy escalation that's twice the rate of inflation. That's what the EIA, that's the Energy Information Agency, tells us.
Just a addendum to all this. It is my understanding that the meeting already purchases electricity from green suppliers, solar and wind. So installing our own panels, windmills, whatever, would not appreciably change our carbon footprint. Financially, it might be very different, but from the point of drastically reducing our carbon footprint for electricity, I don't, if I'm not mistaken, it wouldn't make that much difference between whether solar panel is here or 30 miles away, or a wind turbine in, the Lehigh Valley or something like that. So something to consider, our generator, our supplier, as well as.
And we'd love to help with that,
Yeah.
in part because the rules are changing. A college that declared climate neutrality because they bought offsets and they bought green power is no longer as forward thinking as a college that says, I'm worried more about electrification, and I'm going to think more about my own scope 1 and 2 than I am about scope 3. That's really a shift, a subtle shift in our market that's important to understand, because it really recognizes the maturation of the market and the fact that the SRECs and the carbon offsets have done their work. And now they're saying, just go do your own thing first. Invest in energy conservation is perhaps more important than stimulating the external market. So it's an area I'm privileged to speak for MAREA. That's the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Association. I've spoke for them twice. My presentations are on our website, and these are some of the questions they're getting into in terms of policy shifts. Very interesting time that we're at. You can read about it on science-based initiatives, SBI.
Jim, could you go back to the phasing slide? I think it was Margie. I think it was like 16 or 17. Yeah, that's it. So Judy will tell you I think about money too much, but that's sort of my job here. I'm clerk of finance, and I'm also a trustee on Founders Trust. And I take some comfort from this slide because, you know, we weren't even here when Founders Trust was formed, but it was $500,000, I think, was initially raised. It should be $2 or $3 million now, except we spend some of that money. You know, we spent $100,000 on the first day school. We spent $100,000 on the wall. We have uses for the money. But I know Founders Trust would love to keep it well over $500,000. And when you see these numbers, you might get scared. Oh my God, we're going to fall below that. But realize that we're invested in a growth and income fund at Friends Fiduciary. And growth is the equity and income is the bonds. And it's probably a 70-30 to 60-40 split. And it produces about an 8-9% annualized return on average. Markets go up and down, but on average. And so when we have over $1 million in Founders Trust right now, and if you think of that 8-9% return, that's $80, $90, $100,000 a year. When you see the distribution, we only get a 4% distribution every year, but the rest of it increases the fund balance. So when I look at this and I see in probably the first 2 years, we're spending about $209,000, that's more or less the earnings in Founders Trust. And then the next 3 years, 211 is $70,000 a year. And then the last 5 years is less than $40,000 a year. So we should, unless the markets collapse and there's no predictions, we should be able to generate enough return from Founders Trust over the next 10 years to more or less pay for these expenses without touching the principal of Founders Trust. And that's not even taking into account the fact that our general fund has about $300,000, and that earns money too. So, you know, I don't think we should get scared by the 640 number or think, oh, gee, we're endangering Founders Trust. We really have that fund, and again, I wasn't around when it was started, it gives so much financial stability that I really do take some comfort that even with this kind of upgrading of our facilities, we're not putting ourselves in any sort of financial danger at all.
That's a wonderful way to end my comments.
Sorry, what's the question?
But it speaks to the balance of stewardship and the comfort of having it in a fund that tells you what it is doing versus your buildings that are silent until they call out in exasperation for help. And you're avoiding that. You're getting ahead of the curve. And what you're beginning to suggest is you can knit those together in terms of a stewardship that helps us move funds from the physical endowment or from the fiscal endowment to the physical endowment, right? Which is really what you're talking about doing. You're talking about being comfort that they give you a return here. Now you're going to put them in here and they're going to depreciate. But again, you couldn't be who you are if you didn't have a wonderful facility. So that is what we call building stewardship. It's the teeter-totter that helps us make good decisions.
Hi, me. I have a question because you probably know that we had a lot of discussion about the safety of the deck at the first day school. And I was wondering if that was considered in your report and where it would be.
Yeah, the near-term work, which we were very pleased to be helpful and supportive of, is a great example of how decisions evolve over time, and maybe you get to a better place. But we believe that was a financially attractive decision that pushed the bigger cost down the road in a way that was financially helpful.
So is that cost included in our 640?
It's in the out years.
Okay. Okay, I have a question. Were you speaking about the air exchange in this building?
I am.
Oh, I didn't understand that.
Yeah, sorry, we moved back and forth between buildings.
Okay.
Old heat pumps there, old conventional systems there, newer systems here, heat pumps with gas backup. And what we're suggesting is in our data that same system is the replacement cost that's in the first day school. But we're also saying, it doesn't quite work the same. Little kids don't do well with drafts. It's a draftier building than this, believe it or not. The walls aren't as thick and heavy. And we have this geo exchange option that we think is worth exploring. Also different code. When this one was installed in 2022, we required outdoor ventilation into the system directly. When that one was installed, we didn't. So we're relying on infiltration. When it were to be upgraded, code would call for it to have direct outdoor air into the unit. That would allow us to pressurize the building a little better, but it would also mean we'd want to have the same smart controls I alluded to wanting to have here.
Just, Larry, about your question on that Isabel had asked about the deck. So did you say that, so replacement of the deck will probably be needed in the last 10 years of this? Is that what you were saying? I just want to clarify.
I'd love to write a follow-up note to Anne to make sure we've captured that right. I didn't look at the priority things
okay.
explicitly this morning, but I understand the question. I'd like to be able to follow up with it.
Sure.
Just to make
Thank you.
sure I'm right.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you're saying that there's a tremendous openness to the outdoor air in this building. In terms of trying to close it up and keep the heat we have inside the building, what kind of things are we thinking of? I mean, is there some kind of way we could put like thermal glass over our windows that would control some of the airflow or that kind of thing?
So the question I had, I assume we all heard it because he had a microphone, is how do we optimize this system? And the answer is, this is something we see all the time. It's not as though it was done wrong. It was done absolutely right. You have code requirements that'll force you to bring in outdoor air regardless of what your envelope is doing. That's what's happening here. We also have the ability to build smarter systems now. And a smarter system would say, let's guess that this room is occupied at full capacity 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week. That means all the hours that it's not occupied, even if the temperature is set back, we're still bringing in the same amount of outdoor air. And what we should have is a smart system that says, if the outdoor air is friendly, let's bring in as much of it as we can. And if the outdoor air is not friendly, and I'm going to define friendly as both humidity and temperature, if it's not friendly, then we should only bring in enough that we can satisfy code requirements. And code requirements are driven off of CO2. We call that demand control ventilation, meaning that we're throttling the amount of air based on what the occupants are calling for to meet code. And this puts us into CO2 measuring. CO2 is usually a threshold of having the systems respond, happens about 700, 800 parts per million. And then when we get on up to 1,000 or 1,500, you hope not to get to that in an environment. We just did a project like this at Central Moravian Church in Bethlehem. Invite you all up to the UNESCO World Heritage Site to see how other people are working. It is one of my volunteer jobs, is to be treasurer and head of strategic planning for Historic Bethlehem Museums and Site, which is the new UNESCO World Heritage inscription. That was a bit of a commercial. Sorry for that. But I just wanted you to be alive and know that in my spare time, I do some of what you do in terms of taking care of historic structures.
One question, or actually two questions. The first is on your description of the current replacement value. You had different percentages, 3%, 5%, I think.
Yeah.
This building, as you were mentioning, isn't used a tremendous amount, not like Chestnut Hill Meeting, which has 100, 200 visitors a week in it. What is an appropriate percentage that we should be looking at for our usage in terms of our replacement value going forward, and what should we be thinking about in terms of capital expense going forward?
So there are two challenges with that question. One is, what is the right numerator, which is what you're asking for. But in order to get to that, it would be nice to have what the right denominator is. And the denominator is really squishy.
Yeah.
Right. But you could easily say, any of you that have built a house in this area know that it's not going to be $300 a square foot. It's going to be closer to $500, $600, $700, $800 a square foot, maybe even more if you're building a few square feet. So that's a difficult answer because the denominator is so flexible and so fluid. But it's safe to say that this is irreplaceable and priceless, which makes the denominator really, really big, and therefore this investment really, really small on a relative basis. How's that for a non-answer?
That's good. My question. The second question was that you mentioned that the numbers are in 2026 dollars in your estimates. So if we're looking financially, let's say at our income, let's say from the first day school and expenditures that we have to put into the first day school over 10 years, we're looking at equivalents. We just did the financial presentation today, for example. So we have a certain amount of income coming in from first day school, and we're projecting in the same dollars what would go out.
Yeah, in our experience, you can do it either way.
Okay.
You can inflate these dollars for the project year in which they're coming, but in effect, most of the financial models we're looking at and most of the rents and most of the giving follows inflationary tactics. The problem is in the building industry, we went through this big peak coming out of COVID, and especially in things that were electrification driven because the IRA created so much stimulus around that reinvestment that we saw really, really steep price increases and lead times, right? It's very hard to do an electrification project right now. You got transformers that are out a year. So in general, I'd say we hope there's a correction coming, not on his side of the market, but on the building side of the market, right? Where the costs go back down.
Okay.
But we don't know. Therefore, we just keep it simple in 2026 because it makes things muddier in our experience going forward.
Okay.
I guess I can have final word. Stewardship means doing this. It means having a conversation about the place you love. It means remembering that even though we may not all agree on what the strategy going forward is, that we have data, we have process, and you've got external people that you can fire questions at in a way that helps you get to consensus around some pretty sticky things. And what I'd say is that of all the organizations out there, the fact that you look at this, that you talk about it, that you're interested in it, that you're talking about financial models, and you're talking about climate, says that you are exercising wonderful building stewardship. My pleasure to spend a part of my Sunday with you, helping you understand your place of worship. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This has been so helpful, Larry. Really. Thank you. We'll wait a sec, just a sec. Okay, I know we've been here a long time, guys, but we just have two quick things to do. One is three things. One is review and approval of the minutes of April 12th. Any changes to the minutes from April business meeting? Can we go ahead and approve that?
Approved.
Okay, minutes are approved for April. The next is concerns of friends.
I would like to mention that one of the Afghani families that we have supported in the past is now in need of more support, and I will forward a more detailed message about this in next week's blast.
Okay, thanks, Ina. Go ahead. Bert.
Just a notice or concern to friends that it was brought out at this meeting. What we haven't shared as yet is that there is a Benjamin Lay Fellow who is working with the Climate Action Committee about the feasibility of installing solar panels to power our electrical needs. And we go forward with that, and maybe we will be sharing what we have learned with the Stonehouse Group.
Great. Thanks, Bert.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think probably everybody who's in this building today really appreciated the work that property did with getting Stonehouse. This is somebody who speaks our language, and even for the techies that we had here that really explained things that so that the rest of us could understand it too. And I appreciate all the hard work that people put in, and especially the hard work that Stonehurst put in to make it something that's going to make a difference for the future.
Thanks.
And that they
Pete.
complimented us too.
Yeah. Go ahead, Beth.
Hi, it's just a small thing, but it would be nice to have this light working again.
Okay. 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 Anybody else? Okay.
Just a quick question. When is the property committee meeting for us to start discussing all of this, or what's the next step?
So the next step is, my understanding is that property is going to be meeting in June, but go ahead, Ann, why don't you answer that question?
Yeah, property committee is going to meet sometime following this meeting prior to the June meeting, and we will bring forth recommendations. There's a lot to digest here. We're looking at, I don't want to speak on behalf of property, but we're not going to come back with, here are all the recommendations for the next 10 years. We've kind of got to bite this off a little slowly. And we will try to send out our recommendations and our rationale prior to the business meeting so you can read about them and think about them.
Okay, thanks. Any other concerns with friends online? Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have some closing silence, but just one reminder, Winnie needs help of moving 19 chairs over to the where they're going to have the memorial service this afternoon. It starts at 3. So just after we have our closing silence, if there's people are able to help with that, that'd be great. Okay. And we'll just have some closing silence. And I just wanted to really thank everyone for your contributions today and your questions and your comments. It was really, really helpful. And also personally to thank Property Committee for all their work in getting us to this point where we could have Stonehouse Group here. Thank you. Okay. So
Thanks, everybody.
thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.